Welcome to Africa's LSP Podcast, where we explore the world of translation, interpretation, and localization, as well as connect with the language industry's top players. From language service providers to the businesses and individuals who rely on their services, we'll be delving into the challenges, opportunities, and trends shaping the industry. Join us as we discover the power of language and the impact it has on connecting Africa and the world. Brought to you by Bolingo Consult, Africa's LSP Podcast is the go-to podcast for all things language in Africa.
Hello listeners, welcome to another edition of Africa's LSP Podcast. My name is Grace Hammoah Agyemang. I'm going to be your host for as long as I'm going to be here. This is our first edition for the new year, so Happy New Year is in order. In my Ghanaian language, we say Afishapa. Let me know how you also say Happy New Year in your African or Ghanaian language. My guest for today is Belinda Missaah Tuffour. She is an MPhil student of the University of Education, Winneba, here in Ghana, and is currently doing a comparative study of tone between Bono tree and Asante tree. The objective of her study comparatively examines the tone use of some syntactic structures between Bono and Asante tree from an acoustic perspective, which aims at discovering the differences and similarities between both language varieties. Belinda, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Great. Let me first ask you to introduce yourself to us. When we say Belinda Missaah Tuffour, who are we talking about?
Thank you for the opportunity. It's a golden one. Belinda Missaah Tuffour is a grandchild of the Akan's first child. That is to say, I am a Bono, a proud Bono, specifically from Wenchi. I am a student from University of Education, Winneba, currently pursuing MPhil Ghanaian languages. I am also a teacher, and I also deal with everything language, translations, transcriptions, that is to say, sound to text transcriptions, and then phonetics and phonological transcriptions as well. That is from English to Twi or from Twi to English.
You said you're a teacher. What do you teach at where?
I am a Ghanaian language teacher, not at the field currently.
You're currently doing an MPhil in Ghanaian languages. How did that start? And secondly, is that what you've always wanted to do since you were a child?
From childhood, I had always wanted to be a journalist. So I had a dream of going to GIJ to pursue my journalism. But then I was discouraged by one midwife who told me that after schooling, I might not get a job. So I gave it a second thought, wanted to go to the midwifery. But on a second thought, I saw that I had good grades in Ghanaian languages, specifically Twi. So my uncle bought the forms for me, and one father also advised me to do what I know how to do best. I had admission, came to school, and then started.
Is there anything special or particular about why you chose Asante tree? Because there are lots of Ghanaian languages.
Okay, I chose Asante tree because that is mine. It is my language. And Nelson Mandela once said, if you speak to a person in a language he understands, it goes into the head. But if you speak to that same person in a language of his own, it goes to the heart. So I felt that it is mine. It is my language. It is part of me. And so that is what I could do and do best aside all Ghanaian languages.
It's good to know that when you talk to a person through the language they understand, you speak to them to the soul. So talking about your MPhil in Ghanaian language, where you specialized in Asante tree, I understand that you conducted a study you call a comparative study of tone between Bono tree and Asante tree. Tell us briefly about what that is.
The study comparatively examines the tone structures of Bono and Asante tree, and it discusses the similarities and differences between these two dialects and their trigger. Looking at Bono and Asante, spoken in the Bono and Asante regions primarily, we could see that these dialects possess unique tonal structures that makes their speaking and understanding unique. So looking at physical items in isolations, you could see that they have different tonal patterns, but then when they are put together in syntactic structures, their tonal patterns in their isolation changes because of the syntactic structures that they are put in. Now, I would want us to look at a bit of background of my study. Most African languages, including Akan, falls part of tonal languages because most African languages are tonal languages. What at all is tone? It is when pitch is used contrastively. So when someone uses pitch contrastively, then we could say that that language is a tonal language. When we take Akan, for instance, we say it's a tonal language because we could have the same segments, we could have the same sounds in a word, but then the change of pitch in these sounds, when one changes his or her pitch during the production of these words, you could see that you have different meanings. Unlike stressed language such as English, you could see that when the pitch is used, it just changes the class of the word, not meaning. So in English, we could get transport and then transport. It is the same pitch, but then it doesn't change meaning. The meaning in it is you doing a transport or something like that. But one is a verb, one is a noun. Same thing applies to import and import. It's the same meaning. But then when we look at Akan, we could have some words like nam, which is meat. It's the same sound in the same word. You could get nam, which is to walk or to pass somewhere. So it's just the change of the pitch in here that makes the differences in these. And some scholars also argue that the arrangement of the segments bring differences in meaning, but then it is not solely based on that. It is also based on tone. So you could change the segments, which could change meaning, but then the tone also bring changes in meaning in a language. We have two-level tone. When we come to Akan, we have two-level tone. That is the high tone and then the low tone. But then the high tone has an allotone. That is, it is also a high tone, but then it is reduced, and it happens when a low tone interferes to high tones in a construction. So the pitch of the final high tone reduces as a result of the low tone that has come in there. Now, some scholars also are of the view that tone brings dialectal differences, as I am saying. So my study is more or less like a dialectology, studying two dialects. Lots of scholars have approved this fact, and looking at this, we could see that it is very evident in Bono and Asante, and understanding these differences would make these speakers appreciate the nuances of these two dialects.
Let me find out. You gave us a bit of history of how you grew up and all. Did any of your growing up experiences influence your love for the language and how you're pursuing this MPhil?
Okay, I grew up in a Bono area, but then in school, you could see that the teachers and even on playgrounds, children and teachers use Asante as a result of we studying Asante. So when I come home, I switch to Bono. When I go to school, I switch to Asante. So whenever I see an Asante person, I switch to Asante. It's not intentional. It will come by itself. When I see a Bono person, the tongue changes to Bono. So I saw the differences between these two dialects. I thought about it, and I felt that one of the differences between these two are the tonal patterns and then the structures. So from childhood, that is what has triggered me to go into this study.
How easy or how difficult was it settling on this topic?
I would say it was difficult, but it was easy for me as a Bono person who understands or who speaks Asante. Difficult in the sense that I might not know all tonal patterns of Asante, but then as I study, I would be able to come out with them. But with the Bono, it was easy for me because I've been interacting a lot with Bono people.
Your study, what do you seek to achieve at the end of the day?
it is an acoustic study where I would use instruments to record people, and then I wouldn't look at the tonal patterns by my own, but then I would use something. So by the end of the study, the instrument would help in bringing out the differences and similarities between these. I could also see that because of these differences, sometimes the Ashantis or the Ashanti people find it a bit difficult to understand the Bono speakers in their speaking, and so most of the times they look a bit down on them. So it will help readers and then speakers out there to know the differences and then appreciate them.
Why is it important for you to establish the syntax between the two languages? So far as we can speak it, we're good to go, aren't we?
We are good to go, but when we look at syntax, it is where a language puts together well-formed words in order to create meaning. And we could see that, as I already said, the lexical items in their isolation have their tonal patterns. But then when they are put together in syntactic structures, they also bring different patterns, which also creates different meaning. So looking at the syntax of these two would bring out when the words or the syntactic structures are similar in a language and then when they are different in a different dialect.
You keep talking about an acoustic instrument you're going to use for the collection. Tell us about this instrument and then also your data collection process. How is it going to be like?
My research is a qualitative research. Qualitative in the sense that it will give an in-depth description of the phenomenon I have already stated, and then it will use acoustic instrumental as its research design. Acoustic instrumental here is where I would use an application called Pratt. I would get respondents, record them, then use the application to annotate and then help in the tonal placement of these. The population is Bono and Asante native speakers, and the sampled population is 12. My research site for Bono, I have Teshiman, Sunyani, and Drobo. In the Ashanti region, I have Kumasi, Mampong, and Ejiso. I chose these research sites because they are the popular towns of these two regions and where I would get true native speakers. The number of respondents are 12, which is 6 for each dialect. And I chose 3 males, 3 females for each dialect because when you come to language, social linguistics says that females adapt to language faster than males. So I chose 3 each so that when there is any hitches at the female side, decision making wouldn't be a problem for my study.
So Belinda, the people you're choosing for their respondents, tell us about their demographics. Are you considering age?
I'm considering age, and my age range is from 20 to 50 years. 20 because from childhood they had listened to their people speak, so by the age of 20 they would be more abreast with the language, and then by the age of 50 you could see that when people are growing they lose some things that helps them in speaking or in language. So that is the reason why I chose from 20 to 50 years.
Where are you sourcing your respondents from? Do we see you travel to the regions or the towns you have mentioned, or you're sourcing from the capital city?
Looking at my population sampling, I mentioned that I would use native speakers, and these are the towns that I would get the real native speakers. So I am going to travel into these towns and get these respondents to respond to whatever thing that I would need from them. So I'll travel to Ashanti region and then travel back to Bono region and then back to school, which is not an easy task.
Definitely, it's not an easy task. The instrument you're using for data collection, how does it work? Who is manipulating it? What is the level of human interference with it? How guaranteed are you that you get the right results you're looking forward to?
Okay, so first of all, I would need a soundproof environment where I would have to record these people into any recorder and then place it on the instrument, or I would record them straight into the application, which is the instrument. If I do not get a soundproof environment, it is a challenge. And is an accurate application because I'm not the first person using it, and I've seen lots of people use it. I'm not well equipped in it, but I'm still learning. Since it's a research work, I'm still into it, learning, and I'm hoping to get the best out of it, to get the accurate tonal placements and then the tonal partings from the recordings. And then the data collection strategy is an interview, which is a semi-structured interview. I would ask questions where I would be able to manipulate the questions to suit my study, and also show them pictures and then words to pronounce or produce during my study. And it is a purposive sampling since it is based on some particular people.
So Belinda, what are some of the syntax or syntactics you seek to establish at the end of your research?
I'm looking at some syntactic structures such as simple sentences, noun phrases, and some structures such as pronominals with low-high nouns and others. Now, let's first of all look at the similarities between these two dialects. We could get some examples as the noun phrase. We could get a prereferential modifier, sa, and a noun and a determiner, which all make a noun phrase. So, under the underlying representation in their isolation form, we could see that under their underlying representation, the prereferential modifier, sa, has a low-high tone, and then we could get a noun such as akoko. And when we look at akoko, we could see that akoko has a low-high tone, and then a determiner, yi, that is when they are in isolation. When I mention them, when I produce them in isolation. But then when they are put together, in Asante, the first syllable of the noun, which is the akoko, the tone on the first syllable loses its low tone. Then after that, the high tone of the final syllable of the prereferential modifier spreads its high tone onto the first syllable of the noun, which has lost its low tone. So in Asante, we would have sa kukui, and in Bono, it's the same thing, sa kukui. So when we look at the processes, they have the same processes. That is, it delinks and then there is a tonal spread. So we have the same tonal pattern for these two. That is some of the similarities between these two dialects. Now let's look at some differences. We could talk of when we have a pronominal and a low-high noun, a noun which has a low-high tone. The pronominal in its underlying form has a high tone, and then a low-high noun, as it goes, it has a low and then a high tone in one noun. So in this, in Asante, we could get, for example, mako. It has a low-high tone, but then the me is a high tone. So when you are putting these together as a noun phrase, which is a pronominal and then a noun, Asante would give you memako and Bono would give you memako. So you could see that there are some differences in tonal patterns of these two. Secondly, we could also look at when we have a pronominal with a progressive verb, where we would get me and then probably rididi. In Asante, we would have mirididi, but in Bono, we would have mirididi. So you could see that there are different tonal patterns between these two. So these and many other are what the study looks at. So my study is based on Goldsmith's 1976 autosegmental theory, of which he first propounded it in 1976, and then later in 1979, Ghanaian Publications also made some corrections, published it in 1979. It analyzes tone and intonational patterns in tone language. It also looks at phonological processes such as vowel harmony, consonant harmony, consonant deletion, elision, and others. With this, it has a diagram representation. So after recording and annotating, I would represent it in a diagram form where diagram would show where a syllable delinked with its tone and where a syllable also spreads its tone, either high tone or low tone, onto a syllable which has delinked its low tone. And it will also show where a syllable is given a default tone in these two dialects.
Great. Belinda, you initially told us that you do translation and interpretation. So how do you think your research can also help you as an interpreter or translator?
It is language. And so translation also deals with meaning, and tone also deals with meaning. So in my translation work, sometimes some tones you could read some sentences in a tone of which would not be the intended meaning of what the text wants to portray. So with the tonal changes and differences, it would help me get the right tone for what the text want to tell the public or the readers.
This will definitely be an interesting study, and we all look forward to it. How soon are we likely to see the work done?
You are not going to wait for long. Probably by the end of the year or early next year, the study would be out.
What impact do you want to see your work have on the language services industry, or even on these two languages at the end of the day?
I would want it to encourage those working on the Bono language. I've seen or heard that there are some works on it for Bono to be documented. So this should encourage those working on that for it to be documented. And also it should help the speakers of these two dialects to appreciate the differences between these two dialects and not look down upon each other.
You gave us the assurance that we will not wait for long. The research work will be out late this year or early next year. Where can we access it when it's finally out?
Okay, so after the work is done, after my defense and everything, the work would be at the University of Education Winneba Library, that is Ajumako campus. All things being equal, if everything goes through well, it would be published and it would be on the internet for easy access.
Belinda, so that I'm sure there's some little girl out there or little boy out there who is also a language enthusiast and wants to enter the language services industry. What would be your piece of advice or word to them?
Language is life. Language is power. So you out there listening to me who is a language enthusiast, I would tell you that be encouraged with this little that I put across and forget whatever thing that discourages you.
Is it an easy industry to be in?
I would say no. Nothing is easy, but language itself, it's not easy at all. But when you strive, when you are determined, you would reach the end.
Belinda, thank you so much for coming to share your work with us. And like I said earlier, we look forward to getting the whole piece. This has been the Africa's LSP Podcast. You have been speaking with Belinda Missaah Tuffour, an MPhil student of the University of Education Winneba, doing some beautiful work into a comparative study between Asante tree and Bono tree. My name is Grace Hammoah Agyemang. Thank you so much for making time to join us. See you in the next edition.
Thanks for tuning in to Africa's LSP Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the conversation and learned something new. For feedback or enquiries, reach out to us at podcast@bolingoconsult.com. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review us on your favorite platforms. Until next time, stay curious and keep growing.